The Young Bucks are in the back, and they set up the context by promoting Dynasty next weekend, April 21st, and their match with FTR to determine the new tag champions. The winners will become the first 3-time AEW tag champions, and their last match took place at All In last August, the biggest show in company history, and the biggest match they had been a part of, and the winners of that match would likely be coined the best team of this generation. But that same day, there was a backstage incident with the now forever known two individuals. One being the scapegoat, Jack Perry, a guy who reminds them of themselves. And some people have said, if you have a problem with Jack Perry, chances are you're the problem. The other individual, who they would not name, tried to make this entire show about himself. And he happens to be good friends with FTR. So Nick says, maybe FTR were the whole masterminds behind this backstage incident. And Matt, I thought this was pretty clever. I did get amused by this. Matt just stopped saying, hey, you can't just spread rumors that you don't know to be fact and bash someone on a public forum. You can't just say that. Yes, very unprofessional. The Bucks then state that because of this backstage incident with these two individuals, they were thrown off their game. They had to put their EVP hats on. The locker room was in disarray. Respectable journalists needed answers, and they feel there should be a big asterisk next to FTR's win at All In. They had to deal with a high school scrap, and the ramifications threatened to take down their biggest show ever. So with that, they go to the footage. And what I did like the fact is that they did not put any ambient sound over this. It was just silence. And I think that did work for what they were trying to convey here. That it was, I mean, whatever your thought was, I think everyone was at least curious to see this. I mean, it's just natural human psychology of something secret that we're going to reveal. Whether it was effective or not, I think this was at least, engaging for people to actually see the footage. And this was not grainy footage. This was not like who's who here. Like this was all like, it was very clear who all the principal characters were here and the supporting cast in the backstage area. Save for who were seated at the monitors, one of which you can assume was Tony Khan.
If I sent you a link to a fight on World Star that everybody has been talking about and dissecting that resulted in a man firing from a company that's been discussed for 10 months, would you not watch? Of course you would. My mom would want to watch this.
Okay, now let me throw this out to you though, okay? If we take out that intrigue and you just watch this video cold, would this necessitate you sending me this link and say, John, look at this fight?
Of course not. No, it's not about the fight. It's about who's in the fight. It's about what it's all about.
It's like what Paul Levesque said. It's not about the moves. It's about the emotion.
That's exactly it. Yes, I'm sure he would have loved this. Let's talk about it.
So they show the footage of, so this is backstage at All In. Jack Perry has come back from his match. You know what? I think we should actually do is before we talk about this video, let's go back to the MMA Hour from last week. And this is about a minute of CM Punk giving his interpretation of what happened with Jack Perry.
What happened?
Jack came back from his match. I was the next match. I'm sitting there. I got people with me. I'm not going to say who they are. Because I got a lot of friends who work there, and I wish them all well, and I don't want them to be punished because they're friends with me. And I walk up to him, and I'm just like, Jack, why do you insist on doing this dumb internet shit, like on TV, And he's just like, well, if you got a problem about it, do something about it. And I was just like, man, come on, man. I'll fucking kill you. Like, what are we doing, And it just, it's like Chael says, sometimes you just can't let you get close. I thought I was doing a responsible thing. I didn't punch anybody. I just choked somebody a little bit. Samoa Joe was there, told me to stop, and then I quit. I turned to Tony and I said, this place is a fucking joke, man. You're a clown. I quit. I went to my room, and then Joe and Jerry Lynn came and got me, and they're like, let's just go out there and kill it. And I was just too fired up, and I'm fired up now, and I'm probably going to regret, talking about all this shit. But that's what happened.
So there you go. That was CM Punk's interpretation of what happened from his account. And then, so the footage airs, and you can see Punk walking up to Jack Perry, and they spend, I would say, 20, 30 seconds speaking. We obviously can't hear what is being exchanged, but it's definitely, I would say, semi-confrontational here in terms of, Punk is like right up into him. So the idea that Jack Perry was getting into his space, not really the case. Like they were pretty close up here for the duration of their discussion.
Is that what Punk said, though?
Punk said, what Chael would say is like, don't, I can't remember the exact term that he gave, but nonetheless, they're exchanging words here.
I don't think Punk, at least in retelling the confrontation, said that Perry came up to him. That Chael line was more so in reference to, I guess, when somebody is in your face, you act however, whatever Chael said.
So like, don't get too close. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so then Punk goes to essentially go for like a front chancery on him. Like,
so the shove was,
he shoves him first, and then
the shove is the most important thing I would suggest. And then Perry retaliates with like what looked like, at least some attempt at like a double leg or something like that.
Punk clearly initiated the contact.
And so Punk, I guess, defended using a guillotine.
And then quickly everybody comes in. Now, just looking at this,
and also let's just continue here, because every detail is very important. Punk defends with the guillotine. They knock into the monitors that are situated right behind here. This is presumably Tony Khan is situated.
Yeah.
And this is of course Gorilla.
We never see Tony Khan, but it is very much assumed that he is seated to your far right.
This is where he would be sitting. This is where you normally would sit for a production like this. And Joe comes in, Paul Turner comes in, they break it up, and Jerry Lynn, who's an agent, and Chris Hero steps up from behind the desk. He's this gentleman right here, also sitting near Tony next to Monitor. He comes out and he also joins in trying to break up the fight.
And the key here is that when they start to restrain Punk, like there's a side that's taking Jack Perry, like they're separating the two, and you can see Punk, and assuming that Tony Khan is to your immediate right, like at 3:00, like Punk is like lunging towards that direction and being held back. And it is
now define lunge, because I think that is also going to be something that defenders will.
I mean, putting his weight in that he was going in that direction and was furious. And if he was not being held back, I can't tell you if he was going to get physical with Tony Khan. But he was clearly moving his weight into that direction to go at Tony Khan. He was not just screaming at him. He looked like he was about to make contact with Tony Khan and is being held back.
I think that is a fair interpretation of one person's viewing. Yes.
And yeah, I mean, those are all like...
And presumably this is where, according to the interview with Errol Hawani, this is where Punk presumably says that this company is a joke, and then he left the scene.
Yes, and you're just seeing, Malachi Black would pop up here with Punk. They're checking on it. I believe that would be Chris Harrington in the bottom left corner as well. So, I mean, like there were a lot of witnesses to this as well. Like
my God, that's a whole room full of people who saw this, and we just heard from Punk. Now, can you think back to like all the other reports that might have been out there? Were there any notable sort of mistruths or because I feel like what I saw is how I pictured the event in my mind based off of the reporting.
The only thing that I was curious about was like how many people were around that would have had a pretty good idea of what happened. And it's like a fair amount here, not even taking into account of, if we assume Tony Khan was there at the right, were there others seated there? Because they would have been like as close up as possible. And on top of that, this conversation between Jack Perry and CM Punk, it's going on like, I say 30 seconds. It's not like that's an insignificant amount of time if voices are starting to raise. Like this is happening where it's within earshot, if not right in the eye line of Tony Khan. Like this is happening. Again, like it does we're reaching a bit here, but when you talk about the fact that here was CM Punk at the press conference back at All Out in 2022 and feeling brazen enough to get all of this dirty laundry out there as his boss is seated next to him. And here, I mean, he's about to initiate physical contact with a coworker right in front of his boss as well. Like, this was obviously...
So he did initiate physical contact with a coworker.
Did, yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
And again, like, we can now piece this together with, I mean, Punk's mindset, which I don't think is stunning to people, but I mean, I don't think this man's job security was his priority here, that he, I think, was mentally checked out by this point. And the idea of getting into a fight with a coworker right in front of your boss, I don't think that was something he was weighing in terms of that being a consequence.
Well, there was clearly some sort of mental anguish, and from the interview we know, like, he was not in a very good mental state at all, like, at this point in his employment, and this, at least to me, seemed like the thing that would have driven him over the edge, and at least that's what his actions looked to me like. So, my take though is that it's kind of how, like, I would respond to a similar incident in a schoolyard. CM Punk was the first to lay hands on a colleague in this situation, and therefore I think he was wrong. I think that's inexcusable. I think especially for somebody who had already been involved in a physical confrontation during his employment, and it's especially irresponsible for somebody who's supposed to be a role model in this locker room. But that doesn't completely, dissolve Jack Perry of, wrongdoing. But I think for his part, it's a lot more difficult to know what he's, what he should be blamed for, because we have no audio of this incident. We know he did mention the real glass line. That shouldn't have provoked enough to cause a coworker to push you. But we also don't know what was said in this verbal exchange, So not to say like Jack Perry should receive equal punishment as CM Punk, but is Jack Perry deserving of what we could presume to be his punishment now of not being on AEW TV and being forced into joining the House of Torture?
That punishment does not fit the crime in any way, shape, or form.
Well, clearly he's in for a push now, and this is a way to bring him back.
So let's talk about, like, that's essentially like the video. I would say that, like, if this was an isolated incident, and we are talking about CM Punk here, does that change your view on how this is handled by AEW? And I'll add the fact that, like, for me, if this was on its own of two guys that just, a line is uttered, there's some issues between these two, and it escalates to this, it is a big star. I would say that probably would not be necessarily grounds for releasing someone if this is contained to this. But if you're coupling that with this guy on this big show, and his attitude is this company's a joke, that to me would actually be pushing me further towards like what damage am I doing by having this attitude in my locker room as well? If this guy is so mentally checked out that looks at this company as a complete joke,
shouldn't the press conference at All Out be?
I'm saying I'm assessing this as an isolated incident where Brawl Out does not happen. I mean, when you compound all of this, I think you arrive there. But if this were just strictly isolated and this comes out of nowhere, other than some pre-existing issues between these two that escalate to a fight,
was this enough to fire somebody?
Yes.
Maybe not, but that's not all. That's also, I'm not sure. I really don't know. And I think
it's kind of a useless exercise.
A big part of this, John, is the question about whether or not there was cause for Tony Khan's life to feel threatened. And it's really hard for us to know because we can't even see Tony Khan. We could see what Punk did here. We could see Punk's, what could be interpreted as lunging. But given the level of aggression that
this man is fully being restrained by Jerry Lynn. Yeah. Like this is, and he is like, so
I see some people in the chat room that are debating about whether or not it's lunging. Again, it's to me, the only question is whether or not this would have held up in court. Okay, part of the reason why I believe Tony Khan might have even given that very public reason of saying his life that he felt threatened. I really do feel like there might have been some legal ramifications of it because for fear of a wrongful termination suit. Now, if this were to end up in litigation, would this footage have held up if Tony were to say, I fired this guy because I felt like he was a danger to, the people around me and myself?
I don't know. I can't give you like a legal opinion on this.
I think there's at least an argument to be made, at least, from my very stupid eyes and mind.
I mean, we know that Punk was fired with cause, and it's not like he responded with a lawsuit and claimed, wrongful termination or was fighting this. But anyway, that was the video. I think that it, you can certainly discuss.
Do you think CM Punk lied in the Helwani interview?
I think he definitely painted a much more calmer picture for himself than the incident warranted. I think you can watch that, and even without audio, I think you can state that who was the one that initiated things. It was CM Punk who took things to a physical level.
So I don't think he lied. I think if you read the transcript of his words, it probably happened exactly as what he said. But it was the tone that was conveyed suggested a far more peaceful and calm demeanor than I think the volatility of this footage showed. But that's all just kind of, up for interpretation. Anyway, so now that we kind of have that out of the way, like, okay, do you think AEW should have aired this on TV?
No, I don't. I don't think there was... beyond the one night curiosity, we saw how they attempted to turn this into an angle. I thought this was just really, it almost felt like they were trying to justify the reason to air this by shoehorning it into this FTR Young Bucks match. It said it all when the Bucks are out there with FTR later in the show and the crowd starts, not the whole crowd, but at least enough that it was audible. You get a CM Punk chant at an AEW show.
So I saw a video online where this crowd was they were cheering the footage like it was an actual fight, like they were watching a UFC fight. And there, at least from the vantage point I saw, there were very loud CM Punk chants during the fight and in the aftermath of the fight as well. So they clearly came up with the storyline reason I don't buy the idea that they needed this footage to tell the story of the Young Bucks versus FTR. I think that's totally bullshit. I think this is Tony wanting to put this footage out into the world using his characters as a means to do so.
Who are you supposed to sympathize with after this video airs? Like, who are you supposed to be rooting for?
That's dependent on the opinion of the viewer, right? Oh, you mean in storyline? You're supposed to be for people who want all of this conversation to be over. And this is what makes the FTR response very, very interesting. But first, I can't help but feel while even watching this. I mean, Tony, I was prepared for anything. I was open-minded enough to feel like I could change my mind. Heading into this, I thought it was a bad idea, but Tony seemed so sure that this would result well for the company that I was like, okay, maybe this is all worthwhile. I still come out of this feeling like this is a very petty use of your national TV airtime to respond to one man's ramblings on a podcast by making such a big deal out of it, but whatever, pettiness is kind of part of professional wrestling, and some of the most interesting things in wrestling has come out of one person's idea. It's just that there was a time where I felt like AEW was presented as sort of the Lamborghini of professional wrestling to the WWE's, mass produce Honda, the brand that provides a premium classy product, but for a smaller fan base. But this to me diminishes it. It's already kind of been diminished. This is a company that would rather be a Honda and is trying really hard to be a Honda. And in fact, might actually end up more so being a Kia. So, I mean, this is, to me, Tony Khan choosing to wrestle with the pig. But let's all enjoy the show.
Well, I will say that, coming out of this, I don't think it really built up nor hurt FTR and Young Bucks for the pay-per-view. I don't think there's some wave of interest suddenly for this match. I don't think it accomplished that in any way, shape, or form. To the thought of, would this embarrass CM Punk? I don't think it did. I think that if you were a CM Punk supporter, you're even more emboldened by this guy that is, if you believe CM Punk is someone that is lives and dies with his convictions. He confronted someone. He wasn't embarrassed here. He was the aggressor. You're still cheering and a CM Punk fan after watching this. This was not a case of him losing face or even, comparing it to the Ariel Helwani interview. It's not like he told some 180 story of what happened and looked like a fool either. I didn't think there was a high probability that Punk was going to come out of here scathed, and that was not the case here. For Punk, I would be, if I was Punk, I'm not referencing this in any kind of way. It's like I'd be positioning myself as like, this stuff is like below me, and you're not going to get my acknowledgement of it in some ESPN interview or on TV or interviews or anything like that. I don't know if Punk will go that route, but I don't see how you would.
Let's just say, I agree that I don't know if I see Punk like referencing it himself, like going on like on Raw and like cutting a promo addressing this. Maybe he might reference it. Who knows? But if the next time he's on the MMA Hour or being interviewed by somebody else and he's asked about it, how do you think he responds?
I don't know how he felt about this. I don't know if he watched it. I don't know if he has. I don't know if he's seen the footage before. Like, he may have never seen this footage, for all we know. He said after All In, he never talked to Tony Khan again afterwards. It would suggest that like he was not part of any. Like, he was fired that week. So I'm imagining he hasn't seen the footage as well.
Yeah, hard to say. But I think what you described as that sort of like response of just ignoring it and being above it is really the way I wish AEW responded to CM Punk's online podcast interview,
Yeah, they feel like they got rattled by this, and it just like there's a time for this. There's a time to punch up, and I just didn't feel on this show.
What's punching up to CM Punk on a podcast? A really, really respected podcast that a lot of people listen to, but you're not fighting WWE here. You're fighting one guy.
That's the next segment.
Fighting WWE, sure. Okay, shall we talk about FTR's response, which I found very interesting as well?
They come out. And if I was on the fence at all about this segment, and man, was this WCW 2000? The words that were just like an arrow to my cranium. FTR, this isn't on our format sheet.
Oh man, I missed that. I think I was so like shell shocked from what I'd just seen. I missed the line.
This isn't on the format sheet, and I had to listen to this heartfelt promo with this dude who couldn't put on anything other than a Bart Simpson T-shirt for this promo.
Well, he wasn't expecting to come out on TV.
Why was he here?
See some friends.
Okay. Cash asks, what are we accomplishing by airing this and giving the Young Bucks a built-in excuse? I'm sick and tired of hearing and talking about this. Everyone is ready to move on from this. Instead of talking about the best work that we've ever done, we're airing videos from 8 months ago. We're going to beat the Bucks at Dynasty, and we are sick of you petty little bitches. And then Dax takes the mic. All right. Bless y'all, but I just got to get this out here. And he says that the Bucks like to brag about the fact that they were able to create all these jobs for people, and says, you know what? Maybe without the Bucks, I'd still be shaving this guy's back, in reference to the good old days with the Revival. And FTR has eclipsed the Bucks as the best team on the planet. The Bucks no longer care about the letters AEW. They only care about the letters EVP. And we are building this for all the fans who spend their money to buy a ticket. Yes, the Bucks may have built the foundation of this place, but we put the roof over this house, and we're going to blow that roof off at Dynasty. And that was their retort here, to at least get the focus onto this match at Dynasty. But I think that there were a lot of people that would be co-signing with the sentiment of Cash Wheeler's promo here about just moving on from all of this. And I don't think your heat is on the heel Young Bucks. The heat is on AEW, the company. And you are, instead of trying to make, it's the Bucks are the heels that are admonishing like the actions of this unnamed individual who we won't state by name, and yet your audience is more, I feel, sympathetic to that side because his surrogates are the ones that are speaking on behalf of the average fan here that wants to move on from all of this in Cash Wheeler.
Yeah, Cash and FTR are the baby faces here, and the baby faces' voice is typically what is presented as, I think, more of the truth. So AEW, seemingly Tony Khan himself, if he wrote this, acknowledges that the world wants to move away from this, yet he is the culprit of dragging this back up. I mean, he would probably say CM Punk would be the culprit of dragging this back up, but certainly this is making this way bigger than I think, CM Punk did.
Coming up on Collision, followed by Battle of the Belts. Tony Khan was on the phone during the confrontation. We've got the audio of what CM Punk yelled at him.
Yeah. Believe me, there are going to be plenty of like AI apps that'll like fill in the gaps and provide plenty of audio for all of us to enjoy of that footage.
Yeah, the alternate angles, that'll be on YouTube.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know.
I wouldn't have aired this way. I understand there was immediate interest in seeing this in a vacuum, but for the company, no way. I'm not airing this. I just thought it came off really desperate, and I thought it just it really just felt like grasping instead of the like scrappy underdog that is galvanizing its fan base. I think a lot of their fan base, it's like this is the kind of stuff that there might be momentary interest, but is this in the grand scheme of things, like you're going from your Lamborghini analogy to a Honda. And that's what
I drive a Honda, so
I think that's going to be the analogy everyone takes.
No shame. Great mileage. I think there might be at least some excuse in them being able to say, hey, like we know that people don't want to see this. That's why we're making the baby faces argue against airing footage like this. But man,
what's Jack Perry's statement when he comes back? Like, is he a baby face? Is he a heel? And if so, what is his?
He's a heel. He's a heel, right?
And what's his message?
CM Punk caused me to get kicked out of here and beyond.
And is Punk the default like babyface in this picture that he's describing when he comes back?
Yeah, and CM Punk is already like. Well, I guess like if you're gonna take what Cash's promo. Cash is kind of saying like everybody's bad in this and we should just all move on. Like it's sort of the Adam Copeland. By the way, Adam Copeland really is the one that looks the worst coming out of all.
I don't disagree. Like 1 week ago, that speech, and then this is what's happening this week. I mean, if I was Adam Copeland, I would have been second guessing like doing that promo last week, and then this week it just feels as though like they did the complete opposite of what this like mission statement was supposed to be last week.
Adam Copeland came out and said, "Wrestling is fun. Let's all enjoy wrestling, no matter which brand you cheer for." And essentially, like forget the tribalism and don't pick a side. And then Tony comes here, airs this footage, and divides the whole wrestling world. It was like he was Moses here. All this did was stoke the flames way bigger than they were before. If you're an AEW fan, you probably still be a defender of all of this. If you're a Punk fan, you're probably going to defend CM Punk's actions in some way. So it's a topic of conversation again.